Hello guys, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys are liking the new intro because I like it and it will be changed up a little bit here and there, but right now this is intro I have. I hope that you guys really like the short stories of some of the ships I made, and I hope you guys like it. It's just fluff. Love you guys, have a safe Thanksgiving. Disclaimer, I own none of the Haikyu characters. All of this is just pure entertainment and none of the characters are canon in the way that they act from the show. This is just me taking character and making them have their own personality that I want them to have, and all of the characters are in time skip. Enjoy the video. Atsu. Period. It was their first Thanksgiving together as a couple, and Atsumu had convinced Sakusa to host a small dinner in their apartment. It wasn't a traditional Thanksgiving feast by any means. Atsumu had insisted on adding dishes like gyoza and spicy ramen alongside the turkey, but Sakusa reluctantly agreed. After all, the chaos would only involve a few close friends, and he could handle that. Maybe. As the day rolled around, their dynamic was on full display in the kitchen. Sakusa was meticulously basting the turkey, wearing gloves and a pristine apron, while Atsumu was gleefully trying, and failing, to peel potatoes. Every time Atsumu's peels shot across the counter and onto the floor, Sakusa would let out an exaggerated sigh, muttering about sanitation and precision. Atsumu, ever the cheeky one, would just grin and claim, "This is Thanksgiving magic, Omi. It's supposed to be messy." But the real moment came after the food was finally done and their friends had left. The apartment was quieter now, with just the sound of Atsumu's terrible playlist softly playing in the background. The table was still cluttered with dishes and leftover food, but neither of them cared. They were sitting side by side on the couch, too full to move, when Atsumu suddenly turned to Sakusa with a lopsided grin. "You know," he started, a mischievous glint in his eye, "this was the best Thanksgiving meal I've ever had. All thanks to ya, Chef Sakusa." Sakusa rolled his eyes, but his ears tinged pink. "You didn't even cook." "Sure I did," Atsumu shot back, sitting up. "Who peeled the potatoes, huh? And who taste tested everything to make sure it was edible?" Sakusa raised a brow. "You mean when you ate half the gyoza before it even made it to the table?" Atsumu shrugged dramatically, leaning closer to Sakusa. "Call it quality control." Sakusa shook his head, but before he could retort, Atsumu reached over and gently nudged his hand. "Really, though," he said, quieter this time. "Thanks for putting up with me today. You made this special, Omi. Not just the food, but all of it." Sakusa glanced at him, a small smile finally tugging at his lips. "It's not so bad, doing this with you," he admitted softly. Atsumu beamed at the rare sentiment and leaned over to press a quick, warm kiss to Sakusa's cheek. "Guess that means you're stuck with me for every Thanksgiving, then." Sakusa huffed, but his hand found Atsumu's under the blanket they were sharing. "I guess I can live with that." They stayed there, wrapped in each other's warmth, the glow of the Thanksgiving evening softening everything around them. The end. Period. Bokuto and Akaashi had always been a little unconventional in their approach to things, so when it came to their first Thanksgiving together, it wasn't surprising that their celebration would be anything but traditional. Akaashi had volunteered to cook the turkey, of course, while Bokuto insisted on contributing with a dish of his own, something special. Akaashi had tried to gently steer him towards something simple, but Bokuto was determined to make the day memorable. When Thanksgiving morning arrived, Akaashi was already in the kitchen, rolling up his sleeves and setting to work on the meal. The scent of roasting turkey filled the apartment, and Akaashi was meticulously prepping side dishes, glancing at the clock every so often. But there was one problem. Bokuto had disappeared. Akaashi had already half expected this, knowing Bokuto's boundless energy, but it still left him with a growing sense of anticipation. Where could he have gone? Just as Akaashi started to worry, the door swung open, and Bokuto burst in, arms laden with a pile of ingredients. "I'm back," he exclaimed, grinning ear to ear. "I got the makings of my special surprise dish." Akaashi raised an eyebrow, already concerned. "What did you get?" "Trust me, it's gonna be amazing," Bokuto assured him, practically bouncing on his feet. Akaashi eyed the assortment of ingredients, somehow including marshmallows, sweet potatoes, and chocolate. He sighed, but didn't protest. "All right, what do you need?" Bokuto's face lit up, and with a surprisingly well-practiced grin, he led Akaashi through the process of making his unique Thanksgiving creation. It was a chaotic, yet surprisingly organized series of steps. Sweet potato casserole with a marshmallow crust, drizzled with melted chocolate, topped with a dusting of cinnamon and nutmeg. Akaashi had his reservations, but when Bokuto put his heart into something, it was hard to say no. As the meal progressed, the apartment filled with the rich smells of turkey, mashed potatoes, and Bokuto's somewhat questionable but oddly delicious creation. Akaashi meticulously set the table, arranging everything just so, but when it came time to sit down and eat, Bokuto pulled out one last surprise, a homemade centerpiece, a bouquet of wildflowers, a mix of autumn colors, wrapped in twine and sitting in a mason jar, placed right in the middle of the table. Akaashi's heart swelled at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. He met Bokuto's gaze, the grin on his face unmistakable. "You really outdid yourself today." Bokuto puffed out his chest, a bit of pride in his voice. "I wanted it to be perfect for you. Thanksgiving is about giving thanks, right? I'm thankful for you, Akaashi, and I wanted to show it." Akaashi's gaze softened, his lips curved into a small but genuine smile, and he reached across the table to take Bokuto's hand. "I'm thankful for you too, Koutaro." The two sat together, surrounded by the mismatched dishes they'd made together, sharing a quiet, contented meal. Every bite was a little bit of chaos, a little bit of love, and every moment was exactly how it should be. When they were done, with the table cleared and the remnants of the day left behind, Bokuto leaned back in his chair with a sigh. "Best Thanksgiving ever, even if the casserole's a little much." Akaashi smiled and reached over, brushing his fingers through Bokuto's hair. "You're impossible, but I wouldn't have it any other way." And in that cozy apartment, tucked into each other's company, they were grateful for exactly what they had: each other, a bit of chaos, and a lot of love. The end. Period. Cage Hina. Period. It was Hinata's first Thanksgiving at Kageyama's apartment, and he couldn't have been more excited. They had been together for over a year now, and though Thanksgiving wasn't a holiday Kageyama celebrated as much as Hinata did, he was willing to try for the sake of his boyfriend. Hinata, of course, had big plans, bigger than Kageyama could have imagined. He had made a list of everything he wanted to cook, from mashed potatoes to pumpkin pie, and even a giant turkey that would definitely impress Kageyama. But of course, when the time came to actually start cooking, Kageyama had to step in. Hinata was running around the kitchen, a bit too excited, as flour covered the counters, and the sweet potatoes were still sitting on the counter, unpeeled. "Hinata, what are you doing?" Kageyama called out, holding up a bowl of pre-mixed batter for the mashed potatoes. "You're supposed to be making the turkey, not throwing flour around." Hinata grinned sheepishly, dusting off his hands. "I'm getting everything ready, Kageyama. Don't worry, I got this." His eyes sparkled with his usual energy. "We'll make it together, right?" Kageyama was already rolling his sleeves up and sighing in resignation, though his heart warmed at how much Hinata cared. "Fine, but you're not turning the kitchen into a disaster zone. Let me help." They fell into their rhythm, with Hinata stirring the stuffing as Kageyama carefully prepared the turkey. The moments when they worked together, Kageyama methodically chopping vegetables and Hinata humming along, his hands moving too quickly for his own good, felt like a dance, one only they knew how to do. Despite the occasional mishap, like the gravy that ended up too thick and the stuffing that was a little too salty, they laughed, and somehow everything came together. After what felt like hours of preparation and a few burnt edges here and there, they finally sat down at the small dining table that Kageyama had set up by the window. The dim golden light of the sunset filtered through, casting soft shadows over their feast. Hinata looked at the spread of food, an odd combination of perfectly roasted turkey, overly crispy potatoes, and some unintentional crispy pumpkin pie, and smiled brightly. "This is great, we did it." Kageyama, trying to act indifferent, couldn't hide the pleased look on his face. "I told you, I'd help make it work." They sat down, and Hinata immediately grabbed a piece of turkey, not caring how it looked, and shoved it in his mouth. Kageyama, this turkey is so good, you're a genius," he mumbled with his mouth full. Kageyama chuckled, shaking his head. "You're just happy we didn't set anything on fire." As they ate, they talked about everything and nothing: school, volleyball practice, their plans for the rest of the holiday. But the best part was when Hinata suddenly quieted, his fork halfway to his mouth, and his gaze softened. "Hey, Kageyama," he started, voice quieter than usual. Yet, Hinata leaned across the table, his grin playful yet tender. "I'm really glad we're doing this together. I know it's just some weird holiday stuff, but I like it. I like being with you." Heart skipped a beat, and he set his fork down, looking at Hinata with a rare smile. "Yeah, me too, dumbass." Hinata's eyes sparkled, and he reached across the table, gently brushing his fingers against Kageyama's hand. "You know, if this is Thanksgiving, then I'm thankful for you, for everything, Kageyama." Kageyama's cheeks pinkened, but he squeezed Hinata's hand, squeezing out his own quiet, "Me too." They ate their slightly imperfect meal together, savoring the warmth of the food and the warmth of each other's company. Even though everything was a bit messy, just like them, it felt perfect. Period. Iwaizumi. Period. It was Thanksgiving at Oikawa's family home, and he was feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. This wasn't just any holiday, this was the day Iwaizumi was going to propose. Oikawa had no idea, of course, but he had been subtly hinting at the idea for months. Iwaizumi had always been private, but he'd been planning this moment for weeks, and now, with Oikawa's large, boisterous family all gathered in the dining room, it felt like the right time. The meal was bustling with noise. Oikawa's mother was running around, making sure everything was perfect, while his cousins and aunts chatted excitedly. Oikawa was beside himself, talking about how happy he was to have Iwaizumi with him for the holiday. He looked over at his boyfriend, who was sitting quietly next to him, his usual stoic expression on his face, though Oikawa could see the slight blush in his cheeks. "You're acting like you're about to eat me alive, Iwa-chan. Are you that hungry?" Oikawa teased, nudging Iwaizumi's side with his elbow. Iwaizumi glared playfully at him, but there was a hint of unease in his eyes. "Shut up, Toru, I'm fine." He couldn't keep the smile from creeping onto his face, though. It was always like that around Oikawa. His teasing and relentless energy softened Iwaizumi's edges in the most unexpected ways. Dinner was delicious: turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, and the surprisingly good pumpkin pie that Oikawa's mother had insisted on making from scratch. They ate in a comfortable, familiar rhythm. Oikawa's family treated Iwaizumi like one of their own, and he was always a little quieter than usual around them, but that never bothered Oikawa. In fact, he loved how comfortable Iwaizumi was in their chaotic, love-filled space. As the evening went on, after everyone had eaten their fill, Oikawa's mother stood up with a glass of wine in hand and clinked it gently. "All right, everyone. It's time for the tradition," she announced with a smile. The family fell silent, turning their attention to her. Oikawa raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "What tradition, Mom?" "Well," she said with a smile, "it's a little something we always do at Thanksgiving. A moment to give thanks for the people in our lives, the ones we love. So, let's go around the table and share something we're thankful for." The tradition was simple enough, and everyone started giving their thanks. His younger cousin, his aunt, his uncles. Oikawa gave a dramatic, heartfelt thank you for his family, his friends, and, of course, for Iwaizumi. And then it was Iwaizumi's turn. He cleared his throat, which made Oikawa's stomach flip with sudden nerves. Iwaizumi had been quiet for most of the evening, his eyes flicking to Oikawa with a slight unease. Oikawa hadn't thought much of it, but now that it was his turn, he couldn't help but feel a little giddy. Iwaizumi stood up, and for a moment, Oikawa thought he might faint from the tension. The room was quiet, everyone's eyes fixed on the two of them. I'm thankful for Toru," Iwaizumi started, his voice a little shaky, but steady. He's always been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it. He's probably the best thing to happen to me, and, well," he paused, and Oikawa could feel his heart race as the room seemed to hold its breath. Iwaizumi reached into his pocket, and Oikawa's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. Slowly, Iwaizumi pulled out a small velvet box, holding it up with his hands shaking slightly. "Toru," he said softly, looking at him with that rare, serious gaze. "Oikawa, Toru, from the day we met, you've been a force of nature in my life. Bright, relentless, and impossible to ignore. You have this way of carrying the world on your shoulders, yet making it seem like you're soaring. I've spent years watching you chase your dreams, break your limits, and fight through moments when others doubted you, even when you doubted yourself. And through it all, you never lost that light, that spark, that ridiculous grin I can never look away from. You've taught me how to love fiercely, how to be better, how to stand tall even when the weight feels unbearable. I've seen every side of you, your ambition, your insecurities, your stubbornness, and I've fallen for all of it. Every glance, every laugh, every moment with you is etched into my soul. But Toru, this isn't just about how I feel when I'm with you. It's about how you make everything better, how you push me to be the strongest version of myself, just like you do for everyone you love. And it's about how I want to be that for you too. I want to be the one who holds you when you feel the world slipping. I want to be the one who stands beside you, no matter how far you soar or how hard you fall. So here I am, on my knees, not just because it's tradition, but because this is how much I honor you, how much I respect you. Toru, you are my home, my best friend, my partner in every sense of the word. Will you let me spend the rest of my life fighting for you, with you, and loving you endlessly? Will you marry me?" Oikawa's breath caught in his throat. His heart felt like it was about to burst. "Iwa-chan, are you serious?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but his eyes were wide with astonishment, and a smile tugged at his lips. Iwaizumi nodded, looking into Oikawa's eyes, his own gaze unwavering despite the nerves that were so clear in his posture. "Yet, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I've never been more certain of anything." There was a beat of stunned silence, and then Oikawa burst out in laughter, happy tears already welling in his eyes. "Of course, I'll marry you, Iwa-chan. Yes, 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 the room erupted into applause and cheers, Oikawa's family all standing up to congratulate them. Oikawa threw himself into Iwaizumi's arms, kissing him deeply, his heart racing from the overwhelming joy of the moment. Iwaizumi held him tightly, his hand never leaving Oikawa's, a small smile on his face as Oikawa's laughter filled the room. Oikawa pulled away, still beaming, and wiped away the tears that had started to fall. You know, I'm thankful for a lot of things, but this is the best Thanksgiving I could have ever asked for. Iwaizumi's expression softened, and he gently cupped Oikawa's face, brushing his thumb across his cheek. Me too. I'm thankful for you, Toru, always. Oikawa smiled, leaning into his touch. I love you, Iwa-chan. I love you too, dumbass. Iwaizumi replied with a grin, and there, surrounded by their family, Oikawa and Iwaizumi began the next chapter of their lives, one full of love, laughter, and the promise of forever. Period. Kuroo-ken. Period. It was Thanksgiving at Kuroo and Kenma's apartment, and Kuroo had been excited for the holiday ever since they'd planned it. This year, it was just the two of them, no big family dinners, no friends over, just a cozy meal shared between the two of them. Kuroo had been determined to make it perfect, from the golden brown turkey to the fluffy mashed potatoes and homemade cranberry sauce. He'd even tried his hand at a pumpkin pie, though he had his doubts about how it would turn out. But the morning of Thanksgiving, just as they were about to start cooking, Kenma had started sneezing. At first, Kuroo didn't think much of it. Kenma was always a little sensitive to the cold, especially with his tendency to get absorbed in his gaming and forget to put on a jacket when the weather got chilly. But as the day wore on, Kenma's sneezing became more frequent, and he looked more sluggish than usual. You okay, Kenma? Kuroo asked, glancing over his shoulder from where he was stirring the gravy. Kenma had curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, his usual quiet demeanor a little off. I'm fine, Kenma replied, though his voice was a little more hoarse than usual. He sniffed and wiped his nose with the sleeve of his sweatshirt. Just a little tired. Kuroo frowned, setting the spoon down on the counter. You're not fine, you're sick. Come on, let's get you to bed. Kenma gave him a small, resigned shrug but didn't argue. He stood up carefully and shuffled to their bedroom, collapsing into the bed with a soft groan. Kuroo sighed, walking over to check on him. All right, no cooking for you today. Just stay here and rest. Okay, Kuroo said, sitting down on the edge of the bed and rubbing Kenma's back. I'll take care of everything. Kenma grumbled but nodded, his head sinking into the pillow. I didn't want to mess up the day. Kuroo smiled, brushing Kenma's hair out of his face. You didn't. It's still gonna be perfect. And anyway, Kuroo added with a teasing grin, I get to make you something special for once. You can just relax and be pampered for a change. Kenma's lips twitched into a small smile, his eyelids fluttering as he fought to stay awake. You're ridiculous. I know, Kuroo said, chuckling, but I'm also making sure you're taken care of. Just sleep. I've got this. While Kenma drifted off, Kuroo went back to the kitchen, working with a focus that he rarely had. He carefully checked the turkey, seasoned it just right, and made sure everything was perfect for their little Thanksgiving dinner. When the meal was finally ready, Kuroo set up a small, cozy spread in the living room. The aroma of roasted turkey and mashed potatoes filled the apartment, and he placed a warm bowl of soup by Kenma's side on the bed for when he woke up. By the time Kenma roused from his nap, Kuroo was sitting next to him, smiling brightly. Okay, sleepyhead. Dinner time. Kenma blinked, his voice still a little hoarse but softer now. You actually made it. Yeah, all of it. It's not perfect, but it's still Thanksgiving. Kuroo winked, picking up the soup spoon and feeding Kenma a small bite. And you're gonna eat this, then we'll move on to the good stuff. Kenma, too tired to protest, accepted the food gratefully, savoring the warmth of the soup. You're really good at this, he muttered, glancing up at Kuroo with a soft, sleepy smile. Kuroo's heart melted a little. I'm just good at making sure you're happy, Kenma. You deserve the best, even if it's just a quiet Thanksgiving. Kenma leaned into him, his head resting against Kuroo's shoulder. Thanks for taking care of me. Kuroo wrapped an arm around him, pulling him closer. Always. They spent the rest of the evening curled up on the couch together, the food mostly forgotten as they watched their favorite shows, Kenma occasionally sneezing, and Kuroo offering him a tissue with a grin. It wasn't the grand Thanksgiving they'd originally planned, but it was perfect in its own quiet way. And as Kenma dozed off again, snuggled up against Kuroo, he knew that this simple, peaceful moment with the person he loved, was all he needed. Period. It was Thanksgiving Day, and Ushijima had decided to surprise Tendou with something sweet. He wasn't exactly a master in the kitchen, but he had read a few recipes and thought making a chocolate cake from scratch would be a thoughtful gesture. After all, it wasn't just about the food, it was about showing Tendou how much he cared. Tendou had been in and out of the living room all morning, setting up decorations and ensuring everything was ready for their small Thanksgiving celebration. Ushijima, on the other hand, had secluded himself in the kitchen, a determined look on his face. He carefully followed the recipe, measuring the flour and cocoa powder with precision, mixing the ingredients in a large bowl. It all seemed easy enough, but as the cake baked, the smell wasn't quite what he had hoped for. When the timer went off, Ushijima opened the oven to find a disaster. The cake, instead of being a soft, moist delight, had collapsed into a dense, hard mass that was far from the fluffy dessert he'd envisioned. "Ah," Ushijima muttered under his breath, his brows furrowing. "This isn't right." Hearing his boyfriend's voice in the kitchen, came over, peeking in to see what was going on. His eyes widened in surprise at the sight of the ruined cake. "Ooh, looks like it didn't go as planned," he teased, trying not to laugh too much. Ushijima sighed, scratching the back of his neck. "I thought I followed everything correctly. Maybe I missed something. I wanted to make it perfect for you." Tendou's heart softened at the sight of Ushijima's slightly defeated expression. He walked over and gave Ushijima a comforting pat on the back. "Hey, it's okay. You tried, and that's what matters. But I wanted it to be a surprise," Ushijima said, looking at the cake and then back at it. Tendou, his gaze sincere but still slightly disappointed. Tendou grinned mischievously, his usual playful energy shining through. "Well, I guess we'll just have to make it together then. We can fix it." Ushijima raised an eyebrow, still unsure. "Are you sure? I thought I ruined it completely." "Not at all. Let's do it together. We can salvage it." Tendou's excitement was contagious as he grabbed a spatula and waved it in the air. "Besides, this way we get to make something even better, and I get to help. It'll be our cake." Ushijima couldn't help but smile, nodding. "All right, let's do it together then." Tendou bounced around the kitchen, grabbing ingredients and guiding Ushijima on what to do next. They mixed together a new batch of batter, this time with Tendou taking the lead, pointing out the small tweaks in the recipe as Ushijima followed. The two of them worked side by side, laughing together when a bit of flour spilled onto the counter or when the batter splashed onto the walls. The kitchen was full of their combined energy, Ushijima's quiet determination, and Tendou's infectious enthusiasm. After the new cake was finally in the oven, they cleaned up the mess and sat on the couch, Tendou leaning his head on Ushijima's shoulder. "See, you didn't ruin anything," Tendou said softly, his voice filled with affection. "We made it together." Ushijima nodded, a smile tugging at his lips as he kissed the top of Tendou's head. "I'm glad you're here to help me." When the cake was finally done, the two of them decorated it with a simple chocolate frosting, some colorful sprinkles, and a few carefully placed strawberries. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, made together with care and a little bit of chaos. They sat down at the table, cutting into the cake, and when they took the first bite, Tendou's face lit up. "Not bad at all, Wakatoshi," Tendou said with a grin, his eyes sparkling. "This is actually really good." Ushijima chuckled, his heart swelling with pride. "I guess I'll take that as a compliment." Tendou smiled, reaching over and squeezing Ushijima's hand. "Thank you for trying, and thank you for making this day so special. Even if the cake didn't start out perfect, it turned out pretty great because we did it together." Ushijima, feeling the warmth of Tendou's words, nodded. "You're welcome, Tendou. I'm glad you're here." And as they sat together, enjoying the cake they had made, the messy, imperfect Thanksgiving had turned into something far more meaningful than either of them had expected. It wasn't about getting everything right, it was about being together, making memories, and sharing moments of happiness. Period. Osasuna. Period. It was Thanksgiving Day, and Suna was standing in Osamu's kitchen, looking a bit out of his element. He had always admired Osamu's cooking. His twin brother, Atsumu, often talked about how Osamu's cooking could rival the best chefs in the world. So, when Osamu suggested they cook Thanksgiving dinner together, Suna, despite his usual laid-back attitude, was eager to learn. He had never really cooked much before, usually relying on takeout or Atsumu's questionable attempts in the kitchen. "All right, Suna, you ready?" Osamu grinned, a bit of flour dusting his cheek as he pulled out a big bowl. Suna raised an eyebrow, hands in his pockets. "I mean, I'm not ready, but I still think it'd be easier if we just ordered food." Osamu chuckled, shaking his head. "Come on, this is about making the food together. Besides, I'll teach you the ropes. It'll be fun." Suna sighed dramatically but gave a lazy smile. I guess, if you say so. They started with the basics, Osamu teaching Suna how to properly chop vegetables. Suna had never paid much attention to knife skills before, but Osamu was patient, guiding his hand as he showed him how to slice an onion without crying. Keep your fingers tucked in, Osamu said, his voice warm and steady. You don't want to end up with a finger in the stuffing. Suna shot him a deadpan look. Please don't jinx me. Not jinxing, just making sure you don't hurt yourself. You're hopeless in the kitchen, Suna, Osamu teased, though his voice was filled with affection. He was always so calm, so meticulous, that Suna couldn't help but admire his focus. As they worked, Suna slowly started to get the hang of it. They mashed potatoes together, the soft scent of butter and cream filling the air. Osamu smiled to himself, watching Suna's concentration as he learned how to season the potatoes just right. Suna, his usual laid-back demeanor slipping, now seemed to be genuinely focused. You know, this isn't as bad as I thought, he admitted, slightly surprised by how much he was enjoying it. I always thought cooking was more stressful, but it's kinda peaceful. That's because you've got me around, Osamu said with a grin, wiping his hands on a towel before pulling out a roasting pan. I've been cooking for years, Suna. It's all about the rhythm. Suna raised an eyebrow. Rhythm? Yeah, cooking's like volleyball, Osamu continued, chuckling as he seasoned the turkey. You gotta know when to mix, when to rest, and when to put things in the oven. It's about timing. Suna smirked, leaning against the counter, looking at Osamu with newfound respect. So you're saying I could be a cooking pro with your expert guidance? Exactly, Osamu teased. You're a quick learner, Suna. Just gotta trust the process. By the time the food was ready, the kitchen smelled incredible. The turkey was perfectly golden, the stuffing was fluffy, and the mashed potatoes were creamy. Suna stood back and took it all in, genuinely impressed. Wow, we actually did it, Suna said, a rare sense of pride in his voice. I didn't burn anything. Osamu laughed softly, nudging him with his shoulder. See, I told you, you just needed a little help. They set the table together, Suna glancing at the food and then at Osamu. I guess I get why you like cooking now. It's kind of fun. And we made all this together. Osamu smiled, his heart warming at Suna's sincerity. Yeah, it's nice, huh? It's not just about the food. It's about making something with the people you care about. Suna, suddenly shy, nudged Osamu's arm. Thanks for teaching me. I might not be a pro like you, but I think I could get used to this. You don't need to be a pro, Osamu said softly, smiling at him. Just making it together is enough for me. And as they sat down to their Thanksgiving dinner, with laughter and light-hearted conversation filling the room, Suna felt a warmth in his chest that went beyond the delicious food. It wasn't just the turkey or the mashed potatoes that made the day special, it was the quiet joy of learning something new, of being with Osamu, and sharing a moment that would become a lasting memory. Period. Daisuga, bonus. Period. It had been a long day for Daichi. As a police officer, he'd been out on the streets all day, working through Thanksgiving to keep the city safe. He had barely been able to send Sugawara a text to let him know he'd be home late. Between calls and his shift running late, it had been non-stop. By the time he finally finished his shift, the clock read 9 p.m. Exhausted and hungry, Daichi was looking forward to finally being home, even if Thanksgiving had passed him by. When he walked into the apartment, the first thing he noticed was the faint smell of something delicious in the air. He frowned, confused. He hadn't expected dinner to be waiting for him. He'd figured Sugawara would have eaten already, probably spending the day with friends or family while he was on duty. But when he walked into the kitchen, his heart skipped a beat. There, on the table, was a beautiful spread of food, everything Daichi loved. The turkey, perfectly golden and roasted with a crispy skin. Sugawara's homemade mashed potatoes, creamy and buttery, just the way Daichi liked them. Stuffing that looked like it had been made with extra love, and cranberry sauce that was sweet and tart. Even his favorite pumpkin pie was cooling on the counter, fresh out of the oven. Suga. Daichi's voice cracked slightly, overwhelmed by the sight. Sugawara turned from the stove, a warm smile spreading across his face when he saw Daichi standing in the doorway, clearly exhausted but surprised by the feast in front of him. Welcome home, Daichi, Sugawara said gently, walking over to him. I figured you'd be tired, so I thought I'd make you a nice Thanksgiving dinner. I know you didn't get to eat anything while you were out there. Daichi blinked in shock. But I didn't expect this. You didn't have to do all this, Suga. Sugawara shrugged, but the affection in his eyes was clear. It's Thanksgiving, and I know you've been working hard all day. The least I could do was make sure you had a warm meal when you got home. Daichi felt a rush of warmth in his chest, the exhaustion from the day slowly melting away in the presence of Sugawara's kindness. He pulled Sugawara into a tight hug, pressing his cheek to his hair. "You're amazing, you know that." Sugawara chuckled softly, resting his head against Daichi's chest. "I just wanted to do something nice for you, Daichi. You've been working so hard, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you." Daichi smiled, feeling the sincerity in Sugawara's words. They stayed like that for a moment, the weight of the day lifting as they simply held each other. Finally, Daichi pulled back, his stomach growling slightly. "As much as I love the hugs, I think I need to eat. You've got me hungry now." Sugawara grinned, leading him to the table. "I thought you'd say that. Everything's ready, just for you." They sat down together, and Daichi eagerly dug in, savoring every bite. Each dish was made with such care, and it reminded him of just how lucky he was. Sugawara had thought of everything, his favorite foods, his favorite flavors, and had prepared them all for him after such a long day. "This is incredible," Suga Daichi said between bites, his smile widening. "I can't believe you did all this. You really outdid yourself." Sugawara just smiled, his cheeks flushing a little as he reached for his own plate. "Well, I wanted to make sure you had the best Thanksgiving, even if it's a little late." As they ate, the conversation flowed easily, filled with quiet laughter and the warmth of being together. Sugawara had taken the time to make Daichi feel cared for, and in return, Daichi felt a deep sense of gratitude. By the time they finished their meal, the apartment was quiet, save for the soft clink of dishes being cleared. Daichi leaned back in his chair, sighing contentedly. "You know, this is the best Thanksgiving I've ever had," Daichi said softly, looking at Sugawara with a fond smile. "I didn't expect to be so tired when I got home, but having you here, taking care of me, this is perfect." Sugawara reached across the table and took Daichi's hand in his eyes warm and sincere. "I'm just happy I could be here with you. Thanksgiving isn't just about the food, it's about being with the people you care about. And I care about you, Daichi, more than anything." Daichi's heart swelled with affection, and he squeezed Sugawara's hand gently. "I love you, Suga. Thank you for making this day so special." Sugawara smiled, his eyes soft. "I love you too, Daichi, always." And as they sat together in the quiet of the evening, their hearts full and content, it felt like the perfect Thanksgiving after all. Even if it was late, it was filled with love, warmth, and the comfort of being exactly where they both needed to be, together.